advancement in filmmaking technology aims to elevate and enrich movie viewing experience, and one such breakthrough is high dynamic range, or HDR. Laser technology has been instrumental in the projection of these HDR images. Our first session of the day is a masterclass entitled Laser for Post-Production and Evolution to HDR. This deeply technical discourse, led by an industry expert with years of experiences, will unravel the intricacies of HDR and its role in shaping emerging trends in post-production, offering valuable insights into this cutting-edge tool for modern filmmakers.
Hi, I'm Anthon Muller. Who knows? Maybe their feedback helps you to develop your concept further, or perhaps these interactions will connect you with other like-minded individuals.
That's weird. Why not try a laser?
The latest technology using mixed reality to provide guided maintenance
nature. Well, that's quite an evolution, ain't it?
Explore your ideas further in a structured and a very supportive setting and see and how they could play a role in the future of cinema.
It's time now to welcome on stage the Global Director of Strategic Marketing at Barco, a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience on the industry, Mr. Anthon Muller. May I now request Sri Pankaj Saxena, Artistic Director of 55th EFI, to please join us on the stage to felicitate our guest. Thank you, sir, for joining us for the felicitation. And now, over to Mr. Anthon Muller with a gracious request to commence his masterclass. Over to you.
Zidrot laser to me. Revolutionizing the cinema. En nummer 1 in de wereld.
Why lamps? That's weird. Why not try a laser?
Hey, what about nature?
She loves it.
Well, that's quite an evolution, ain't it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Program Director, people coming out this morning to listen to me and get some insights about laser, specifically in post-production, as well as the evolution to HDR. Thank you for inviting us to bring some insights to India and specifically around what's happening in the industry around the latest technology. So this morning I'm going to take you through a little bit about background around what's happening in the post-production industry and specifically the adoption of laser. There is a big adoption and I'm going to give you a little bit of market trends and what's happening globally within cinema and also within post-production specifically, and how to gear up for the future. And also recently, the introduction of our latest HDR by Barco that we've launched globally. So the first slide talks a little bit about what's happening in the post-production world globally, what we see. Of course, the first highlight is the industry growth. If you look at post-production specifically, there's a static growth within the post-production world. There's a high demand for high-quality video, not just in cinema, but also specifically in advertising and also in corporate media. So a big focus and a demand is coming from globally around they want high quality video when they do produce. Technology enhancements that's happening. We've seen the adoption of laser specifically because the lamp projectors are aging. A lot of the manufacturers and OEM are discontinuing lamps specifically. Also, if you look at in the EU, there is also a tighter regulation that's coming in specifically around lamp technology and decreasing the distribution of lamps. And also video editing software. There is rapid technology enhancements that's happening in video editing software. A lot of cloud-based collaboration tools that's helping the post-industry. And ultimately that provide more effective workflows. And that is one of the key elements for post-production is to have more effective workflows when producing content from film to advertising and corporate media. What's happening in the post-industry specifically within, there is big established players, and I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of that as well. But we see a huge emerging boutique studios opening, and it happened in your own market here in India as well, but globally as well. Very, very unique boutique post-production studios are emerging. So that is really making the segment quite competitive, and the post houses are fighting to compete and to differentiate in the market. So they need to create different expertise. They need to innovate in terms of the service offering. So really how technology can help also the post houses to differentiate. This is a nice global slide for you to get an overview. This is a representation of post-production houses and studios globally. I'm sure you all know the global studios. I don't need to go into that. But if you look at the concentration of where films are produced and productions are happening, of course, US and Canada is dominating with about 2,619 studios and post-production houses. Europe, UK, about 1,600. And if we look at India, Middle East and Asia, there's about 374 and growing rapidly. We see that. And then interesting, very down south, Australia and New Zealand, with quite a high percentage of 254 post houses. And then not last but least is, of course, LATAM with about 33. Interesting, the 254 down in Australia and New Zealand is most of the Hollywood-specific content gets produced in Australia and New Zealand, like Hogwarts, etc. So there's a lot of production that's happening down south, but it is 99% for Hollywood. At the bottom, you can see a little bit of, these are the top 10 global post houses, and I'm sure you are very familiar with them. So today, if you look at what's happening in the post world, 99% of post-production currently still happening on laser, on lamp-based or xenon-based projectors. But how does it impact also the cinema market? So if you look at the exhibitor, the cinema space, more than 29%, probably this year, the end of this year, we will reach around 40% of exhibitors already using laser projection, meaning we as end consumer, I'm also one of those that's watching movies regularly, we're watching it probably on a laser projector already. However, if you look to the left-hand side, the install base of post-production. So post-production is still very slow in adopting laser. So meaning, yes, our moviegoers, we're getting used, and we're seeing a film probably on laser. So grading movies on lamp projectors can no longer represent the correct image on all screens. Like I said, you'll probably see the install. So this is install base. IB stands for install base. So it's meaning this is projectors that is physically installed at a premise, not just Barco, but the global market. Okay. So this is the latest stats as of 2023. These are shipments that is going out by all OEMs, by all manufacturers. You can see in 2013, it was 100% lamp-based or xenon-based. And 2023, we ended on over 80% of global shipments from all manufacturers were laser technology. So meaning laser is becoming more and more prominent within the cinema ecosystem and the cinema space. So how is that transforming into, if we look at, and we do quite a lot of research. I just spoke to gentlemen in the back. I travel quite extensively. We read a lot of analysis, but the best that we can learn from is being in the market. And that's why we also here is to really get an understanding what's happening also in the market in India specific. But what's happening in the post industry, some of the key requirements the post-production have, of course, very, very important is about the image quality. Image quality is quite critical. There needs to be consistency in the quality when they grade. Content and format flexibility is absolutely key. There is the metamerism mismatch that can happen, and that's a big topic where perception of different colors. It depends on the type of light source there is. Big importance for the post house or the colorist is about the reference image needs to represent typically a xenon, and that is what we hear from the colorist that grading. So big thing is that what we hear from the post houses and the colorists that we're engaging with is lamp. They want a lamp-like projector. So when they grade, they want that xenon look when they grade. Although the film is played within DCI standards on a laser projector. Important also is white glove service. So when you deal with a post house, is that they really want to be kept with white gloves, not just from an installation point of view, but also on uptime point of view. Is that if there's downtime, they lose between $35,000 and $45,000 per day if they're in a process to grade. And then very important is that cash flow is quite key for them. The income for post houses there's bursts. It depends on the titles that is available. Sometimes post houses are busy for 2-3 months based on titles that's coming in, but then the remaining of the year is quite quiet. So very important is that the big ask for post houses is understand us, understand our business model, and provide products and services to us based on how we operate. And we've listened to that. So one of the big topics, of course, is why choosing laser technology for post-production. And there's 4 key elements why choosing laser for post-production. The first one, of course, is superior contrast. Laser gives you that high levels of contrast, allowing deeper blacks and brighter whites. And it ensures you that vivid, clear color and providing immersive experience, both for the moviegoer, but also for the colorist. The exceptional uniformity, and I think that is one of the key elements for the post and colorist, is the uniformity. There needs to be consistency of brightness, consistency of color throughout the grading process. Flicker-free, and we've seen that with previous technologies that is out there in projection. There is flickering. And specifically, if you grade for a long period, sometimes 9, 10, 11, 12 hours at a time, you cannot have flickering. And with a laser, that addresses the zero flickering and give you ease of mind and ease on the eye to grade for a long, consistent time. And then extended color gambit, which is quite key for the colorist also to grade for the future. Technology is enhancing. You have LED, you've got HDR, so that you have a higher gambit of color available, and that is laser provides that for you. Okay. Good. Moving on. What we see is, of course, laser. The adoption of laser will drive the evolution of the adoption of HDR. So, like you've seen the statistics, the adoption of laser is happening rapidly in the cinema space, but definitely laser for post-production specifically is key within in the industry, and then up to the evolution of HDR. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of our recent HDR and what is HDR in the industry. One slide about Barco. So we've listened to the post-production market, and we recently just released our full portfolio of products and services really to partner with a post-production market. Of course, SDR, that's your standard product, projector for SDR, but it's dedicated designed with hardware and dedicated software for the post-production. It is a different model, it's a different software than you will have for the general exhibitor space. Moving on to HDR, in order to grade for our latest light steering HDR projector, you need a grading tool to do that. So we've just released a new box. It's called, it is a box at the moment, but it's software predominantly and massive GPU for processing, and it integrates within the colorist current workflow, so it integrates into your Dissolve DaVinci, and then the latest HDR projector that you see at number 3, and that plays both HDR and SDR for the colorists. So you have one projector that can play HDR and SDR. And then very important is the services. So I was asked to keep this slide for 2 seconds, that you can enjoy the slide. So this is true HDR. Just a sneak peek on HDR and how we see HDR in the cinema environment, and bringing HDR to cinema, but also very important is not just bringing HDR to cinema, but bringing HDR also to the moviegoer, but also to the post-production house that needs to grade for HDR. So to be successful within HDR, we see there's 3 key elements. Is the post-production. Post-production needs to have the right tools. They need to have the right hardware, the right software to enable to grade perfectly for HDR. And HDR is the future for cinema. And on the right-hand side is the moviegoer. So interesting is the education to the moviegoer around HDR. Interesting, I spoke to my friends, and a lot of them don't know what I do. So they know I'm in technology somewhere. And I said, I work for Barco, and we develop a technology for cinema, etc. And I told them, we've just released HDR, and some of them do have OLED and QLED TVs, and we use HDR on our mobile phones and our iPads, etc. already. And I said, yeah, now you can go and watch a movie in true HDR in cinema. And they said, but I thought I've been watching it in HDR the last 10 years. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen to the moviegoer as well, is that, what is the difference? What am I watching? And I want a more immersive experience, specifically with HDR. And then very important in the middle is also the enabling of the exhibitor. The exhibitor needs to understand, the exhibitor needs to see the benefits of HDR, both from a moviegoer experience, but also in terms of financial value and an uplift of ticket pricing, for instance, of HDR. Because our consumers want to have a better experience, a better PLF experience, a better video and sound quality. So very, very important is that there's the 3 categories. It's the post-production, and that is what I'm talking about today. And you will see how what are we doing for HDR in post-production, the exhibitor as well as the moviegoer, to enhance HDR and bringing HDR to the market. So if we look at a little bit about, and I promised I'm not going to talk a lot technical, and I'm not an engineer. I'm a technologist and a strategist. So, but I'm going to give you a little bit of insights into the technology of HDR and how it was developed. Of course, the projection solution is designed, and we've engaged with the filmmakers around the world to design this projector and the HDR projector specifically for the market. It has laser, of course, at its core, and you can see laser is appreciated already in the industry based on the adoption of laser within cinema. And then it is an evolution for Barco. It's built on our standard Series 4 projectors, which is the biggest trusted platform for laser projection in the industry globally. And then it has got the widest color gamut and contrast level to amaze our moviegoers. So that was the intent when we developed the machine. It is quite a beast when you see it, but it's quite impressive when you see the output and the experience you have on HDR. So just going to share, it's not technical, just high level. It is a patent technology that Barco developed on HDR by Barco. Your standard SDR, you've got your screen and you've got your light blocking DLP, so your laser is projecting the light through. There is a lot of light that is wasted in your standard SDR, and it gives you then ultimately limited peak lumens, and it gives you quite erased black with the current SDR. But if you look at the HDR technology in high level, we've developed specific algorithms for HDR. There's specific processors within the projector that has never been there. And then, very important, the programmable lens that allows you to have the full use of the laser source. And that you can direct the light and that you can steer the light. And that's why we call it, it's a light steering HDR, because we use the laser and we're steering the light into the right direction and for optimal bright peaks. So with HDR, you can have brighter peaks and deeper blacks that will give you that HDR projection. So we now have official true HDR for cinema, true HDR for post-production. So like you've seen, we've developed a dedicated portfolio for post-production with both projection, software, and hardware for the colorist and the post house. Your SDR typically have about 48 nits output. Your HDR by Barco gives you deeper blacks, brighter lights, and you can see the nice light coming out there at the top. And it gives you up to 300 nits output. So that's your standard SDR, which is the DCI compliant and DCI regulated for cinema. And on the right is you see the high dynamic range HDR by Barco. It gives you the brighter highlights, deeper blacks, and ultimately more immersive midtones that we can derive out of the HDR projector. So this gives you a little bit of overview of the high actual and perceived contrast in the industry, where we're standing and where does Barco are positioned from a HDR point of view. Your SDR, as you can see on the left-hand side, at about 48 nits. You have competitor A, about 75%, and then competitor B, about 100 nits. And our closest competitor in terms of light output and nits is 108. And with HDR by Barco, we achieve a 300 nits performance on actual contrast and light. So a lot of people ask, it is a massive beast. It's a lot of light. It's a lot of lasers. A lot of lasers that will consume much more power, and it will be much more power heavy to power all this lasers and steer the lasers. So if you look at the graph at the bottom, you've got your sustainability, your horizontal and your vertical axis is your SDR at 48 nits is relatively green. in terms of power consumption to laser output or to nits output. If you look at your EDR technology at 108 is moving into the reds in terms of power consumption. Your LED sits slight in the middle, and if you just use a standard 300 nit projection, it is quite heavy on to get to 300 nits and the laser output. You need quite a lot of energy for that. So with our engineering, we're quite proud to say that the light steering HDR projector consumes about 20% more energy than a standard SDR projector. So it's very ecological to operate, which is quite important for us. And it gives you, of course, 6 times brighter peaks, 5 times deeper blacks. You have the full Rec 2020 color gambit available, and we've seen that is a demand, like you've seen in the previous slides. There is quite a lot of demand, both from cinema, both from the consumer, as well as technology, new screens that's been developed, etc., that you need wider color gambit available to grade with. And then it gives you the full cinematic quality, high performance, scalable, and it really looks amazing. So once it's available in India, really go out and go and watch a movie in HDR. It changed cinema. We get spoiled. I get spoiled. I've got a normal LED TV. I'm not even a QLED at home. And we sit in our auditorium, slightly smaller than this in our head office, where we use the technology and we test the technology and we watch some films in that to get experience between SDR and HDR. And when I get home, it feels like that TV is 200 years old. So I'm going to upgrade my TV in the next, hopefully for Christmas, getting a new QLED HDR TV as well as home. So you're getting spoiled with that. Second last slide is colors. So if this is the color gambit, and I said to you, very important to see you've got your full Rec 2020 available on HDR. If you look at the blue triangle, it is that your standard SDR, EDR, and LED that's your traditional P3 color framework that you've got. And now with your HDR by Barco and some of the future LEDs, you've got your full Rec 2020 available to grade your film. To that, I'd like to thank you for your time. I think I'm good from a timing point of view. I'm going to end off just with a short video that give you an introduction of the post-production services from Barco.
We understand the tools movie colorists use are just as critical as the projection itself. That's why we've crafted our post-production solution with specialized hardware and software designed exclusively for post-production demands. The Barco Series 4 SP4KP delivers flawless viewing of SDR-graded movies in laser quality. The Barco HDR Lightbox enables precise HDR grading and integrates seamlessly into your workflow. And the Barco LS4KP ensures viewing HDR-graded movies in stunning detail and color quality. But our partnership doesn't stop there. With Barco's unmatched 24/7, 360-degree technical support, you can rely on smooth, worry-free operations, letting you focus on the creative process rather than the tools. From the first color adjustment to the final review, Barco's innovative technology and service push the boundaries of color and support you every step of the way to deliver the highest quality grading results. Post-production is where vision turns into excellence, and with Barco, you grade to excellence.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience listening to me. I hope I've shared some insight on laser, specifically on post-production, and give you a sneak peek on HDR. Like I said, we've recently released HDR by Barco. We've launched in the US first, and that was strategically based on PLF markets. We've enabled Madhu, I think, five locations already, including Times Square. The key cinemas already playing HDR. And last week we've released in London, in Leicester Square, the first cinema playing HDR. And we have strategically released, I think, 6 titles already, working very strategically with the studios to adopt the technology, including the latest Gladiator 2 is now also available on HDR, and more titles and more locations are being rolled out. And that 6 sites we achieved in 2 months globally, so with 6 titles already. So a lot of more titles are scheduled for 2025 and more locations to be enabled globally.
He finished it and he said
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks for your time.
We have time for some question and answer sessions. So if anybody has any questions, mics please.
What changes would the theaters, the cinema houses would need to make in their projection system to show such kind of HDR films? Thank you.
Pleasure. So I think just to repeat the question, if I'm correctly, what changes do cinemas need to make to adopt HDR? Okay. So if you look at, I think the biggest change is the size, because it is quite it's not a massive projector. If you look at the picture, I think, let me show that to you. Let me get to that one. If you look at that, is the complete projector. So we designed it, I must say, if you look at some of the competitors out there, it's quite bulky. The cooling is separate, its cooling racks is separately, etc. If you look at, that's your projector at the top, and that's based on our SP4K B chassis. So it's our current B chassis available. Of course, if you open it now, there's fibers and there's extra processors in. You can hardly touch it. It's quite complex inside. And at the bottom is your cooling. So your cooling is, so all the processing and the lasers is at the top, and your cooling is, and your laser driver module sits at the bottom. And typically, because of the cabling and the cooling mechanisms that locks into the projector, you cannot move the cooling more than probably, I think, not even half a meter, but it's a short distance, probably about a meter maximum away from the projector. It needs to be quite close due to the cabling and the fibers. So changes to be made is we need to do a good site visit from Barco or your partner or the partner that's servicing the exhibitor, is to look at the booth space. Is there enough space in the booth for it? And then very important is the laser safety. Because it's got higher nits output, there is a big requirement around the safety of the laser. Does it reach somebody's eyes in a short distance? Is the distance enough between the booth and the screen? Okay. And does it touch any human in that? So laser safety is quite critical. Screen sizes, in the post house, the post-production screens, we've designed 2 models. because we understand in the post house the screen sizes are much smaller than in exhibitor space. So we've designed a projector for 6.5 meters, because a lot of the post houses in the final grading stage, the rooms are smaller, the screens are smaller. So we've designed a model. It's still exactly the same chassis, nothing changed. We just changed the mechanics inside and the lasers and the power. There's a 6.5 meter, up to 6.5 meter projector, and then there's a larger one up to 10 meters for post-production. But the commercial one is bigger, and we can do dual projection as well for larger screens.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for...
Maybe I answered a lot of questions from somebody else.
Yeah, I have one question. Thanks for your wonderful presentation, for a good understanding like a layman. Actually, I heard that Christie is another emerging technology, I think, like Barco. What Barco differentiate from Christie? Technology-wise, cost-wise, other things. I think, am I correct? Christie is another, because in India, I think Barco, most of the people are using Barco. Yeah. But soon they are also come for competition, I think. So.
Good,
yeah.
Good. I think I'm not going to mention any competitors because it's of competitor landscape, etc. Let me just, sorry, I want to get to that slide just to guide our conversation in there. So if you look at, there you go. So HDR is a standard, that's DCI, so there are multiple competitors that develop standard laser projection. And, you know, it's like Toyota, Tata, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Rolls-Royce, etc. So there's always a wide variety of manufacturers in there, and they differentiate either on quality, durability, services, etc. In terms of HDR, there you can see the statistics. I can't tell you the competitors, but Christie is in there. And Barco's is the true HDR. So all the other technologies that's out there is more to EDR, extended dynamic range, not true HDR, purely because of the nits output and how we steer the light. That gives you that higher contrast, higher uniformity, darker blacks, and brighter brights. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So one more question. Actually, you know that it is an industrial standard. Now consumers in India, lots of home videos and the players like Epson are playing a major role. Do Barco have that standard of products to cater home theaters kind of thing?
Very good question, and we had a long conversation with my colleagues the last few days. You've got your e-cinemas, specifically in India, and it requires also laser and quality. At the moment, our portfolio is more a premium portfolio. So home cinema, we have a high-end residential division within Barco Cinema specifically, and we do manufacture specific projectors for high-end residential, but it's high-end residential, private jets, yachts, etc., where the Barco projector goes into. Will we go into the below 1,000 euros or below 5,000 euros? We'll have to see. Right? So we will have to see.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Anil Lakki. I'm a DP. I want to know what is the major difference between the lamp and the laser projection, and what's the life of laser projectors? How many hours and this thing?
So just to, your question is what is the difference between lamp and laser? And then your second question is...
Life, because lamp projectors, we face more the life of the lamp actually. So they are hour-based, like lamps, it goes like a very cost cost involved in that. That's how the laser will help us to reduce that cost, replacing the lamp projector.
Exactly. I think you answered some of your questions already yourself. Like I said, I'm not an engineer, but we've got some of our colleagues here. Your lamp, of course, you need to replace the lamps. Hey? You need to replace those lamps X amount of hours. It depends on how you use it. So that is extra cost for the lamps. So your serviceability cost is higher, definitely on lamp. The difference between lamp and laser, with laser, there's your benefit. You get higher superior contrast. Your uniformity is better. You don't have flicker with laser, and you have a much wider color gamut available in terms of movies. So the way we see lamp, so interesting, we discontinued lamp already, and so does most of the manufacturers already discontinued, because you cannot get that out from a lamp-based projector. Also, the running cost, like I said, your energy cost, etc., to consume is much higher.
There are any models which comes in like 2K, 4K? There is any specifics?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've got full 2K models, and we've got 4K models.
Achha, this is very specific question. How many laser projectors are installed in India right now?
I can give it to you afterwards. So I've got access to the data.
Okay.
Out of my mind, I can't tell you.
Okay,
But
fine.
what we've seen, there's close to 40,000 projectors, laser projectors installed worldwide. There's about 129,000 projectors globally. So it's, like we said, it's reaching over the 35% already of laser. In India specifically, I have the stats, but I need to look at my the portal in terms of the install base for India specifically.
Okay, fine. And is it very specific to use for only HDR grading, or normal grading also we can use laser projectors? Because in India, we don't have that kind of, even Barco, Christie are the two major projectors, but still we have another other projectors which UFO uses for. The UFO is a larger cinema, DCP chain. So what I'm asking is that if I use a laser projector at my post-production level, okay, and I grade according to that, it's a final. Like there are so many, still India we don't have a full 2K projector also. So how does it help us?
Okay. So in the grading process, you can grade 80% complete. Okay. And if you look at the HD, because the HDR by Barco is different, it's not different, but we use light steering, which I explained, which direct the light and give you that optimal light output and give you that 300 nits. You need to, in the grading process, you need this tool, the HDR light box that goes within the standard grading protocols with your DaVinci, Resolve, etc. It integrates into that. It helps you then to make sure that you've graded every scene correctly to the maximum output available and utilize that 300 nits where needed. Okay? Because you get some colorists that will do a blanket, say, software and push it up to 200 nits, and that is graded already. This tool helps you to grade scene by scene and make sure it is graded to the intent of the filmmaker and give focus to specific scenes where it's needed. Okay? So you will need that box to integrate into your Resolve DaVinci. And for final viewing, so you can use that box with your reference monitor, with your Sony X300, etc. You can use that to grade up to 80%. But if you want to view your final film in cinematic experience, you need to use the HDR projector. So that's, if you look at the first slide I showed was around what's happening in the post industry, is how do the post houses differentiate themselves, right? We are going to release the HDR in India 2025, it's coming. So there is going to be post houses that are going to say, hey, I want to grade in HDR, I want to have local content in HDR, because we will enable HDR also in cinema in India. And it is different models. So you may need to go to a specific site or a specific post house if you do not have your own HDR projector to do the final viewing. You can do it with your reference monitor and that box, but you will not be able to see it in the final view.
Thank you. And one
Let's
more.
get one question from the back, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So from a moviegoer perspective, how do we access information about projection system in a specific screen? Because we don't even know if it's a 2K or a 4K projection. And if you're planning to introduce a rating system for a specific screens, these screens are good, bad, something like that, so that we get more information on what we are watching.
Sorry, I didn't hear everything. Something about the accessibility of when do you know it's a SDR or HDR projector?
More information about what kind of projection is installed in a specific screen.
In a specific screen. Very good, very good question, sir. So if you look at this slide specifically to HDR, so what we've done on SDR, are there global websites or service for the moviegoer to say what is installed, right? To my knowledge, I don't think there's any website available in the world that gives you that, right? And so it depends when you enter, if you're going to watch on IMAX or you're going to watch on a PLF, and generally your PLFs probably 99% should be laser if you go into a premium cinema. What we're doing now on HDR specifically, because HDR is new for cinema, it's new for consumers, we ourselves developed a full website that give access to the end consumer, educate the end consumer about what is the difference between SDR and HDR, and they can buy movie tickets straight from our platform of the specific cinema chain. And so the cinema chain is advertised on our platform, and it educates then the end consumer what is HDR, and what is the difference between SDR, HDR, and which specific cinemas has that technology in. So unfortunately not on the SDR and the LAMP side, but for the future that you're going to see now, the website, it's live already, it's hdrbybarco.com, and you can see already all the theaters in the world that has the projector and which titles are already in HDR, etc. So hopefully our industry can get together and have a central access for our end consumers, because we need to educate.
Hi, I want to understand the effect of that light on human eye. The people who work for in DI or in the studio, the ideal screen time they can be exposed to such light when projected and working for very long in those hours in the studios.
Sorry,
the grading process.
Can somebody? I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
just wanted to know, previously when we were working on SDR monitors, SDR screenings, so in the post-production studio facility, we sit for longer hours, like 4 hours, 3 hours, and we take a break and we come back again. So it doesn't affect our eyes much while working on a particular film. Now coming to laser and that too HDR with 300 nits, what would be the effect of it?
Very good question, because in post-production you sit sometimes 24 hours. Depends on if that title needs to get out. so you work very long time. So what we recommend is that 80%, of course, of the grading happens with your reference monitor, right? With the box, with the HDR light box that I showed you. So you will grade with a box and with your Sony X300 or X310 or whatever, X3110, and 80% of the work will be done there. And that is our recommendation, that you do only the last 20% in the final viewing in the auditorium, that you do that, so that you limit your exposure there. But also, like I said in the beginning, we do a pre-site inspection with our certified partners. So for post-production, we only work with certified partners that get trained by us. It's about the laser safety. So, and that laser safety passed the safety certification required. So we make sure that the distance is correct. I've visited about 20 post houses globally, from the biggest to the smallest. And the rooms sometimes, the grading consoles, etc., is literally behind the lens of the projector. Right? So that we will not install. So we will not install a projector if the booth and the auditorium doesn't meet the safety standards. Okay. Very important.
Hello, sir. Sorry, yes. So last. So I'm Farooq Iqbal. So my two questions is there. Thank you very much for your nice presentations. So what you are talking about right now, it is about the throwing on angle point of view, because projector is throwing light. Now, what is your suggestion? Do you have any calibrations about your screen? What screen we should use, and what is the color tones we should use in our post-production studio as well as the theater? Do you have any calibration system? Barco have any calibration system, color calibrations, I mean to say, to get the proper light reflections of HDR projections?
Very, very important is that for HDR, you need the correct screen and the from an installation and a calibration point of view. So therefore, we selected and we're training very specific partners. So not everyone will be able to install and maintain the projector, because it is still quite complex. The technical screen gain, etc., I have it. Like I said to you, I'm not an engineer, but there is recommendations on HDR what gain screen, silver or white, etc., you need for HDR. So once you're interested, or the exhibitor is interested, we will sit with you. And of course, calibration, there is calibration that's happening. There's included cameras, etc., that helps with the color and the calibration, yes. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. So I have a question, which is that cinema is an evolving medium, right? Cinema is an evolving medium, right? So right now we had Darren Aronofsky, who made a film in 18K. The pace of cutting films has increased. The image needs to be way, way more immersive to gather an audience, right? So my question is, as we are moving forward with technological advancements, is it going to get harder and harder to appreciate black and white films of the 30s and 40s, and are we going to lose sensitivity to them? And probably like 30, 40 years from now, black and white films are just curated by film students and are completely stopped watching by the common folk.
just reflecting back what I heard, so it's very soft, but I think you said with all the technologies coming in, will black and white disappear?
Yeah, I mean, sensitivity is going to get reduced to it, right? So is it going to be harder to appreciate those films or immerse ourselves in the films of 30s and 40s, maybe, you know?
Yeah. I'm not a color expert. Interesting, I've spent last week with the Color Association, the Global Color Association, and scientists in London, because we involve them in the developing of this technology. And color is quite an interesting, I've never knew color is so important, you know, and it's quite fascinating. And if you look at, especially on the HDR side, with the grading capability now as a colorist, you will have, and the filmmaker will have, a wider gambit available to grade in. So in my view, it will actually improve, you know, because if you look at HDR, it gives you darker blacks through the technology, and it gives you brighter whites, or where you want to put focus on. So you can really actually play now more with the color, because you will have a wider color gamut available to play with. And if it's black and white, it's just black and white. But with HDR, it will emphasize that. I haven't seen a HDR movie in black and white, and that's maybe something I'm going to put on with our team in Hollywood. We've got a whole color and a post-production team in Hollywood, and I'm there next week in LA, and I'm going to ask them if they can look at a title in black and white, and let's bring out a title in black and white. But in short, I think it's going to improve our black and white films.
So, hi, sir. So, thank you for your session. And my question is basically, if you take in India, it's most of the projection systems which are being used is lamp projectors. So, let's take a film like Bahubali, where I felt the image to be HDR, right? Because maybe it could be graded in a way where the IRE levels are pushed in a matter that it feels HDR, right? So I want to know the difference between what is, the image feeling HDR versus actual HDR. For example, I watched Dune 2 in my hometown, where there is first installed laser projection, right? So I really felt the difference in brighter brights and the deepest blacks. Literally, you feel like when sun comes up, or suddenly when light goes on in the auditorium, right? So you just squint your eyes, right? So I felt that when watching Dune 2, whereas while watching Bahubali, I don't feel that, but still I felt the image to be looking HDR. So my question is it the grading technique where in Dune 2 they used the general part of the images are like lower IRE, and then they created the brightest images to be the higher IRE, right? So the contrast came from the grading, right? So that's why it creates the drastic difference. So let's say if you have your slide on the left-hand side, you had images which was dulled down, and on the right side, you had images which has been pushed through slide editing, right? So which makes it feel HDR. So my question is, the feeling of HDR versus what is true HDR. So how can one understand and experience it? Thank you.
So what is, in short, what is true HDR and what's SDR? I think that's what you're asking now. So, of course, there's bodies that regulates that, you know, so, and we have to comply to that regulation. So your SDR standard by DCI is 48 nits. Okay. HDR, there's different ranges, of course. but also you need to take in consideration your environment that you're sitting in. So if you sit at home, your TV at home, if you've got a QLED or a HDR TV, that is officially 1000 nits, okay? But you have natural light coming into your room, you've got a bulb sitting here, etc. So that makes it softer, okay? But when you're sitting in a cinema, and based on the bodies, the authorities that we said we can push it only up to 300 nits, because in a cinema, a real closed cinema, it's dark. Right? There's no light. And you can push it maximum to 300. So we're not saying push every single scene to 300 nits. Right? That will look unnatural completely. Some of the images will distort, etc. So the image quality will not be great. And that's why we have the tool, the light box, that helps the colorist to grade every scene. The software pulls in the entire film. It's got massive GPU processing, and it processes every scene by scene, and it tells the colorist where the system thinks you can increase the nits or put more focus on. Okay? Then it is up to the colorist and the director to say, yes, there's a candle, but I want to put more focus on that, the light that's coming from the candle, and I want to make the room more black. They can adjust it then through. So the tool tells them which scene they can adjust. So it is not grading the entire film up to 300 nits, but really put focus where it needs focus. And that is what we say, that tool is a grading assistant to help the post industry. And it's really a different experience seeing a movie in HDR. So I've been privileged to see it, one or two movies in HDR, and like I said, I'm going back home and I want to check out my TV. It's old.
So, hi. So, most of screens are SDR today, or say low tech, not suitable for HDR films. So, if you do your film or a short film on HDR tech, but ultimately people in the screens in India are not going to see much difference, I guess, right? Because the screens are not yet there.
Just to reflect back, your question is, say, if a title is graded in HDR and it comes here, are you going to see a difference?
Yes.
Okay. So the film is generally generated with HDR that can play, the projector can play HDR. So when the title gets distributed to a market or to a cinema, that cinema will only get depends on what projector they have, they will request a SDR version or a HDR version. So if it's HDR graded globally, only the auditoriums that has a HDR projector in will get the DCI film that is graded with those HDR parameters.
Yes.
So you will not see it.
Yes.
So unfortunately not.
Yes.
Because also the projector won't have the capability to give that output. So number one, you will not get that file. In HDR, the local projector will receive it in SDR.
So for true experience, first the exhibitors need to change their projectors, then the true experience will follow from post-production.
Exactly. So we have to start with the post industry, and that's why we're here, and that's why it is so important. It's kind of the chicken and the egg thing, is like, is it the exhibitor that needs to have it first, or is it the post house that needs to have it first? In our view, we need to consult both at the same time, because if there's no demand, the exhibitor doesn't upgrade his equipment, we can grade 2,000 titles with Hollywood and in Bollywood and India, but the exhibitors need to upgrade as well, and that's our strategy. So it's actually the three-pronged strategy is we work with Post House to start adopting HDR. We work with the studios. That's why we've got a dedicated team that sits in Hollywood, ex-film teams, and they work with the studios adopting it and say, hey, we want the new film on Gladiator 2. So we work strategically with the studios to grade it and that it's endorsed by the studio. And then the third element is the education of the consumer, that the demand also comes. Because I'm also a consumer, and I'm watching HDR movies here. I watch HDR on YouTube and etc. on my mobile phone. We're all used to that. But what we want is we want to see it on the big screen. We want that same experience.
Hi. Let's have one last question. Yeah, continue.
Hi, so I work at a post-production house and we were thinking about upgrading to Barco. And you said that you're very strict about the requirements. Do we find the information on your website or do we have to contact support?
Great question, and I like your question. We will support you. So, of course, there's a lot of information on barco.com, but we have our teams both in India, Madhu, and our colleagues here in front is here to support you as well. We have approved partners in every country and also in India, so you can also work with your partners. But if you want to connect with our teams, they are here today that can help you. Okay. So, of course, laser safety is quite important. Safety is quite important for us. And even more important with HDR, right? Because HDR, the loud output is much stronger, so we need to make sure we protect, especially in the colorist environment. Your rooms are smaller, it's not as big as this. So we need to do a site visit to check, is your booth big enough, or where you're going to place the projector, the distance to the screen, etc. is okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. And I think we're also available afterwards if there's more questions. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
And with this, our session comes to an end. We would like to thank Mr. Anthon Muller for such an insightful session. We would also like to thank our audience for being with us. We hope you had a lot to gain from this Masterclass. We surely want to see you for the next upcoming sessions with a promise to be as valuable as this one. Thank you and have a great day.